Welcome to yet another episode of the Dynamic Talk Show. The COVID-19 pandemic is neither unprecedented nor an unpredictable black swan event. It is causing massive and still unknowable suffering and continues to surprise us even halfway in 2021. Ever since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic on March 11, 2020, businesses and individuals have suffered huge losses and insurance claims are at an all-time high. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a major shift in the perception of insurance among consumers and the delivery modes by the insurance providers. It has changed the way businesses in India, including the insurance sector, operate. Even for the consumers, the pandemic was a wake-up call regarding the importance of life and the general insurance in challenging times. There is no doubt that the insurance industry has traditionally been resistant to complete digitization, still relying heavily on paper-based application in many areas, or on a face-to-face contact, for example, intermediaries to assess clients. But COVID-19 changed it all. Almost overnight, the industry not only had to get people working effectively from home, but also had to accelerate its digitization plans. It was no longer enough to have a few discrete pilot projects being automated or digitized. Paper-based processes and in-person meetings were simply not an option. To discuss this further, we have with us today Mr. K.V. Dipu, President of Operations and Customer Experience, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance, to discuss the heightened importance of digital transformation in the changed times in the insurance industry. A few words about Mr. Dipu, an award-winning CXO-level executive spearheading the digital transformation drive at Asia's leading general insurance company, Bajaj Allianz, leveraging startups from fintech, insurtech globally, while leading a team of 1,000 plus people in 220 locations. A management graduate from the IIM Lucknow, he joined Bajaj Allianz in 2016 after a stellar career of nearly 20 years with GE Capital. Welcome to the show, Mr. Dipu. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, sir. Without much delay, let's begin this conversation. The first question that I want to ask you is, the pandemic struck all of us. However, digitization was the key to business resilience during this period, and the pandemic just accelerated the digital transformation. How do you see the shift, and what were the important lessons that were learned by the insurance industry?
I guess, it's a good question to start off with, Smriti. Like you rightly said, when the pandemic was upon all of us, everybody had to, migrate to a digital way of not just working, but a digital way of living virtually overnight. Good thing about us is that we had already invested in a digital transformation journey prior to COVID-19, because you don't get into these kind of transformational journeys overnight. And, we were able to not just survive, but actually, thrive through the entire crisis. Now, what has happened, if you look at it from various aspects, you have multiple constituents, you have partners, you have customers, and you have employees. Employees are working from home, so which means the basics of ensuring good cybersecurity, while ensuring access to all the softwares that they would had they been working from office. So that's clearly, one ask, which is there on firms. Secondly, from the perspective of customers, at that time, contact centers, had to be shut down, or reduced to skeletal capacity because of the lockdown. So what meant was, availability of digital options to customers. So we had our chatbot, AI-driven chatbot. We had WhatsApp, our mobile app, customer portal, and a plethora of digital assets. The good thing is we were able to migrate our customers overnight, and our digital servicing, was as high as 80% during the peak of the pandemic, which meant only 20% of our customers were using the contact center. And then when it came to partners, what we need to understand is that insurance is a distribution-led business. So the accent was on enabling partners. How could partners from their end get into contactless sales? How could they ensure that, they could issue policies and carry out basic services at their end, using portals and apps. So that's what we were able to get going. As I said, we were ready. We were digitally ready. The pandemic, just helped us, accelerate adoption of these assets at scale. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. As a firm, during the last 14 months, we have won in excess of 18 awards, not just at an India or an Asia Pacific level, but at a global level. Our digital servicing, as I mentioned to you, was as high as 80%. And even from a partner perspective, we were able to ensure a seamless switch, without a single glitch. And our customer grievances, which I think is the proof of the pudding, came down by a whopping 90%. I think one of the lessons, which the industry at large has picked up, now that we are 14 months into the pandemic, is while the focus, of course, at that point of time was on digitizing the physical, because as I mentioned, everybody had to get into a digital way of working. But I think now the onus has, or the accent has shifted to humanizing the digital. How do you ensure that you give the efficacy and the consistency of bots while ensuring that you give empathy and a healing touch to customers? So how do you blend the science of AI with the art of customer centricity to give human centric AI? So I think that's the cusp we are on right now.
Congratulations, sir. I mean,
Thank
this,
you.
the award, it's just not the award, it's more than that. The customer grievance is dropping down. Everything shifting, the operations totally shifting. More than 80% speaks for itself, I think.
Thank you.
Adding to the 80% operations that shifted, there was a spurt of claims under the liability policies. As bookkeeping and monitoring of employee honesty proved a challenge, fidelity and crime policies witnessed an increase in claims. The commerce and the service industry faced several data breaches and compromises during the pandemic, and we are still hearing that. This increased the claims as well. How did you manage this situation?
Yeah. So Smriti, what happens, when it comes to, the shift, from the physical, to the digital way of working, right? All the traffic jams, and all the obstacles, that you see, on the physical highways, now shifted, to digital highways. And then firms need to be equal to the challenge. So one tool which a lot of firms have used is pattern analytics. Obviously, we can't share, what we do, right? But then, now that, the data and as well as, the way of working is digital, right? We've leveraged, pattern analytics, in a big way, to be on top of the game. And the other is, if you look at cyber security, as I mentioned, it is in play. I think there is a lot of investment which has been made globally. I think one thing which, all of us need to understand is, if you see in the last 14 months, it's not as if, because everybody is, digitally working, there has been a massive unprecedented spurt, in cyber crime and data loss and so on and so forth. I think we managed, fairly well, right, across industries and, across geographies. And coming down to the to the nuts and bolts, in terms of how do we manage, right? So one, of course, is dual authentication. That's something which a lot of solutions revolve around. The other is authorized access, right? Role based access, which ensures that you continue to work seamlessly while ensuring that access is not universal. And especially in some functions, you ensure restricted access control. So that's something a lot of firms are investing in. And the other is you also get into a lot of monitoring, right, in terms of type A and type B errors. And it doesn't harm if there is an increase in false positives, because it's better to be safe than to be sorry.
So, this is an ongoing, I think, with the second wave now coming in, we're still not out of the pandemic. All these plans that were made in 2020, you think will need to be fine tuned, or will have to be totally changed, or will they be redundant for the insurance sector? What is the roadmap for the future? And how are these scenarios likely to impact 2021? Because this doesn't seem to be going away. Now the whole color palette is coming out of the funkles, the black, the white. I don't know which other color we can expect.
No, it's a good question, Smriti. I think there are three aspects here. One is, to your point on crystal ball gazing, I think the future is likely to be digital. It's a combination of physical and digital. If you look at our insurance industry, if you look at claims, you can crash your car. The processing can be digital, but ultimately you have to physically get the car repaired, because the repair can't be, digital. Similarly, if you get hospitalized, the process can be digital, but ultimately you have to, get treated by a doctor, right? And the healing has to be physical. So I think, the future is going to be digital. Secondly, in terms of, what the industry has to, how the industry has to fine tune its plans. I already mentioned that in response to the first question, that today the accent, is on humanizing the digital, right? Because everybody, has, either through agility, or through, force because of the pandemic, got onto the digital bandwagon. But the idea is, customers, still need that empathy. They still need that healing touch, because customers don't call you up during good times. They call you up when they are in trouble. Apart from efficient servicing, they need empathy. So I think this whole accent of getting into conversational AI, I think is one area where, firms need to fine tune their approach. And, thirdly, to your point about, how do we prepare for the future? You see, what COVID-19 has forced upon us is, it is not the last black swan event that we have seen, right? If you take the next 40, 50 years, we can't say that there will be no such event, right? Now, the challenge for the future is, how are you going to be ready for an event which you can't even predict? There could be an event which you can't predict. That's the whole nature of black swan events. But then you need to be ready, right? Because you could have life and death situations, right? People in hospitals, right? How do you prepare? So I think the accent today is not so much on horizon based thinking as being agile, in terms of being responsive as quickly as you can be. So you need to be continuously on your feet and monitor the ground level situation, and keep fine tuning your response. So I think you need to be alert and agile, all the time, and keep learning. I think it's a game of continuous recalibration of your day to day strategy.
That's I think a good point to make. We need to obviously be agile and keep learning. But what you said about the phygital, I mean, I always was under the impression that phygital, these are new concepts which are emerging in this lockdown situation, phygital, etc. Phygital only is for manufacturing firms, but no, I think I'm on the wrong assumption. Phygital is in every industry.
Right.
Okay. Coming to my next question. Given that the physical act of selling, that has been severely affected due to the lockdown restrictions and the social distancing norms, how do we spoke just about how digital is important, physical plus digital. How do you build and protect the customer? That's the demand side of it.
So Smriti, if you see, for example, our logo, it says caringly yours. That's something which we want to embed, in every employee and in every partner of ours. So I think the whole idea starts with, philosophy of care. I think if you are able to demonstrate, care, and there is, a term which is gaining, widespread currency, which is digital care. How do you ensure that, you care, even as you are digital? I think that's one thing, which, we need to do, in order to ensure that, we cater to customers, demands. The other aspect, in terms of, how do we, ensure that, we cater to this is today, like I mentioned earlier, we need to focus on contactless sales because travel is restricted and there could be lockdowns and there could be, even wariness on the, on the customer's side, to have, physical meetings, with people, who are strangers. So I think the point is, how do you get into conversations, right? We have to figure out the art of ensuring that we accept this as the new normal. One is to say that, okay, we'll be done with this and then, we get back into the earlier way of working. The other is to say, okay, now this is, permanent feature. So how do we, gravitate towards contactless sales? So maybe getting into, digital conversations, and making them, conversational. And I'll just, highlight, these concepts, with a couple of, examples. And then, through this, how do you convert a push into a pull? So let me, give you 2-3 examples. Now, one is, let us take, health insurance. We have these customers, who get hospitalized and they have two worries. One worry, of course, is moving from illness to wellness. And the other is many of them are, very, wary of, navigating this complex administrative machinery in hospitals. Go to multiple departments for reports, go for billing somewhere else, so on and so forth. So we deployed, a unique initiative called Virtual Relationship Manager at Hospital. So what does he do? He is virtual because he is not physically in the hospital. Nowadays, hospitals also have restrictions in terms of whom they allow. So he basically calls up customers and he tells them saying that you just need to focus on recovery. What I will do at my end, I'll take care of the processing. And he has a digital device and he takes care of the entire processing bit. And customers loved it. In fact, when we took an NPS, a Net Promoter Score on this particular initiative, we got a score of 90 without a single detractor. So this is a classic case of how we are servicing customers who are physically at hospitals, but through a virtual RM, right? It just gives you a view to, how to handle this going forward. Similarly, let's talk about, customers and let's talk about, how do we interact. Earlier, how do you celebrate birthdays? You have, people, basically, celebrating birthdays in the office. And how do you basically focus on employee engagement? You have some competitions in the office, right? You have a day which you declare, there's singing, painting, and so on. We said, how do we ensure that we do this, in the current scenario? So we said, let's do one thing. We have to move from social and physical distancing, which is there, but we have to move towards emotional and digital connection. And we said, let's do one thing. Let's convert this necessity into a virtue. Today, when people are at home, why focus only on employee engagement? Why can't we move from employee engagement to family engagement? So, for example, when we came out of the MasterChef competition on a weekend, we asked them to involve their family members. So we had somebody's mother, somebody's wife, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, all of them cooking. And it's a WhatsApp group. People are posting recipes. People are posting, beautiful photographs, of dishes from all over India. People just loved it. And then we began to do digital Antakshari, digital, painting competition. So much so, Smriti, that our employee engagement score during the pandemic, finally it turned out to be higher than the engagement score, prior to the pandemic. So I think, human beings, when there is necessity, find ways to, invent and innovate. So I think that is what we need to focus on. How do we use these current, digital collaboration tools to try and replicate, human warmth, to the extent possible, be it with customers, be it with partners, or be it with our own employees.
I think what I garner from what you spoke is, if you focus so much on employees, I can just imagine the amount of focus that you'll have on the customers. I mean, usually what people do is, hire digital solutions, have new solutions for the company just for the for the customers, not focusing much on the employees. But however, Bajaj has, the focus, as you said, what are the master chefs, how your custom employee engagement score itself speaks for itself. I think you don't need anything more than this. That's great. Coming to something more technical, AI, artificial intelligence, has been an indispensable tool for the insurance industry. This transformed the entire insurance value chain, right from underwriting a proposal to addressing customer queries to a claim settlement process. Its usage has led to increasing operations efficiently, thereby resulting in obviously a good customer experience, as you said, about the virtual assistant who helps you in the recovery process. How can digital technologies like AI, blockchain, ML help in simplifying insurance processes? And how can insurance adopt a more customer-centric approach using data rather than focusing on selling of products?
Yeah. Again, a good question, Smriti, because there's been a lot of talk on data and AI, in the last few months, especially, after COVID hit us. So 2, 3 aspects here. First is, of course, to start with the customer. You always start with the customer because ultimately, he's the one who's paying for the product and he's the one who needs to be satisfied. And then, thanks to, a digital way of working, customers leave, huge digital footprints behind. So you have a lot more data today, than what was, previously accessible. Now, when you look at this, in terms of how we have leveraged, right? Instead of, maybe walking you through a lot of, conceptual, and theoretical, underpinning, let me explain this, with a few examples. Let's take the motor claim process. Yeah, why do you buy an insurance product? You buy it because when you're in tough times, you would like to avail of the, claim, and you want to do it as seamlessly as possible. Now, the biggest insurance product for players in India and in various markets is motor insurance because it's also mandated by law. What used to happen earlier, in case you crash your car, you would call up the insurance company. They would basically locate a nearby surveyor. He would come, inspect the car, go through the entire process, and then the insurance company, starts its, engagement with you. So we said, why don't we simplify this? So what we have done is, we have basically empowered our customers. We have told them, you basically take photographs of the car and upload them using the mobile app. Simple, we minimize customer effort. And then at our end, we've deployed a combination of photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is a tool, by which we can assess images, and we've deployed AI using our years of expertise. So using a combination of AI and photogrammetry, we can assess the damage extent in minutes, seeing the photographs, and we communicate the amount to the customer. He gives his consent, and we transfer the amount. So what would take days earlier now happens in 20 minutes. So a classic case of AI. Similarly, let's talk about customer experience. So I told you that, our call centers, had to be during the lockdown, we had to suddenly overnight, almost shut them completely. So what did we do at that time? We leveraged our bot. Our bot, we had built it earlier. As I said, you can't build it overnight. It was built using AI. Now everybody has a bot, but how did we use AI to, differentiate ourselves? So 2, 3 aspects. One is, we began offering services in languages other than English. And that's very important when everybody, is basically onto a digital way of working. So we offered services and ensured that we amplified our reach, again, by leveraging AI. The other is, if our bot is not able to answer a query, because a bot is programmed, right? What it does is it seamlessly transfers it to a human being. So for the customer, it's completely uninterrupted service. And then at the back end, we keep collecting an inventory of all the queries which require a human intervention. And then we keep teaching the bot. So the bot is all the time learning, and its own percentage of first time resolution is, increasing. So today, that's one way, by which, we've leveraged, AI to basically amplify this one. The third is, when people started to become wary of touch, given COVID-19, we integrated our bot with Alexa and Google Assistant. So if you had Alexa at home, you could basically voice a command. Hey, Alexa, can I get a copy of my insurance policy? Alexa speaks to a bot, and the policy is emailed to your, registered email ID. So that's what. So these are all ways, by which, we've leveraged, AI to, basically make customer experience smoother. And then coming to your point on blockchain, we were pioneers. We launched a blockchain-driven claim settlement product in travel insurance nearly 4 years ago, much before COVID-19. And this was in the arena of travel, international travel insurance, of course. Today, travel is highly restricted. But let's imagine if somebody had to take a flight from Mumbai to New York. If your flight is delayed, what do? You are basically focused on making all your arrangements all over again, canceling your bookings because your flight is delayed, fresh bookings. And if it's a business meeting, meeting people again, finding out their calendars, canceling your first night's hotel, extending it by another day, cab, so on and so forth. You're hassled. And if someone were to tell you saying that, you're eligible for a trip delay based, payout from the insurance company, you would say, I don't have the time for it. And let's say, even if you had the time, what would you do? The insurance company would say, give me some proof that the flight is delayed. And then, you have to submit some paperwork. We said, why don't we make it, as I said, why don't we minimize customer effort? So we took on the onus of proving the flight delay onto ourselves. We deployed blockchain. We would get immutable proof that the flight is delayed. So no longer did the customer have to tell us that the flight is delayed. We would know. And then we made a fundamental change to the value chain of insurance, which is, why should the customer notify us that is eligible for a claim? We said we would go to the customer and tell him, we know your flight is delayed, you're eligible for a claim. And then, we would just, seamlessly transfer the payout. So customers loved it, and that's how, we were able to leverage blockchain to fundamentally change, the value chain. As I said, we deployed this nearly 4 years ago. And I gave you the examples of AI, which came to light or to the fore and scaled up, during the pandemic. So I think AI and, various other digital tools are here to stay. It's going to be a combination of, man and machine, going forward.
This is the first time I'm actually hearing an insurance company coming to a customer and saying, okay, hello, hi, you're eligible for a claim. This is astounding.
Thank you.
Astounding. So we spoke about, how, as you said, you'll have a more customer-centric approach using data, for example, you gave me a perfect example of a flight delay, rather than focusing on selling the product or, the customer getting hassle. How can other data, can you give me, if you have any examples, how can data analytics solutions help the insurance sector gain more profound levels of insight into customer behavior and needs?
Yeah, I think that's something, which is par for the course nowadays, Smriti. I think everybody has a lot more data because, as I said, the footprint is now digital and not physical. So you leverage analytics, to get very granular, right? Because you can basically now customize and calibrate your data based on various parameters, right? Whether it is geography, whether it is socioeconomic, profiles, various variables, right? And, that's where the actuary, who is the original data scientist, right, can now, leverage analytics, to come up with various kinds of models. So clearly that's one. The other is, we leveraged, our transformation to a cloud, during this entire transformation journey, to leverage data in a far more seamless manner. Because earlier, data used to be hosted in siloed data marts. Now, we have single data lake. And I think, because of a 360-degree view, not only are we able to offer customers, better products and more customized products, but we can also, give them more targeted services because, we have done that. So I think, a host of, customization features, as well as, a better understanding of customers, which has resulted in, a much better insight, from the product team as well as the servicing team, has now come into play, for data and analytics. And I think this is true of not just us, but I think various players in our industry, as well as, various industries, globally. Today, I think it's pretty much become the norm.
What I can summarize, from whatever till now we've spoken, before I, jump to my last question is, instead of focusing on, how can data be used or etc., you all went the reverse way. How can a customer be benefited by all what we have?
Yes.
AI, a chatbot, a blockchain, data, everything. How can it benefit the customer experience journey? Is what I understood your vision, mission, everything was.
Right.
From an operations point of view, from a customer experience point of view, and how can I use all of that to enhance that? And you all thought from the customer's mindset and not as a business mindset. Otherwise, a company going and saying that, hello, hi, I'm there. This is your check for your claim. So
Right.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
that's an amazing discussion that I had. Finally, a last question. Now as we move ahead, so digitization is going to shift gears. What do you think, according to you, some of the changes that the industry's digital leaders shall anticipate, and how should they be prepared? Though I know the crystal ball is still, is not telling us anything, but what do you think? How should they be prepared?
So I already mentioned 2, 3 points, which I'll just pick up and summarize here, and then I'll add maybe a couple of points. One, I told you it's about touchless UI UX, right? Because everybody wants to get into touchless. Nobody wants to press the button in the elevator, right, or the key in the ATM, right? You're very. You see people using their elbows and car keys and pens and so on and so forth. Which is why I told you about voice and what we have done, right? So that's one. The other I told you is also about not just digitizing the physical, but how do you also humanize the digital, right? How do you ensure that you give digital care? I mentioned that to you. The third thing I mentioned to you is that you have to be prepared for the unprepared. While it sounds obvious, but today people will not wait, right? They'll say COVID-19 happened, different players responded differently. So how do you prepare? Okay, so this is from what I spoke to you earlier. A couple of points I want to add, Smriti. One is, I think, if you see the way of interacting with customers will change, right? One is, I think, for example, you'll see a lot more remote servicing. So let me give you an example. Let's say your washing machine breaks down. Now, today you may not want to allow somebody into your house. So it could very well be tomorrow that you call up the company, you get into a video chat, and then they will tell you, okay, fine, open the washing machine, do this, do that, right? So it's a lot more, self-service, with remote aid. So I think that's one way, and that will have implications for multiple industries, right? So that's one. The other is, let's take, for example, somebody who wants to go and buy a house. Today, what do? You physically drive to the location, and you basically, there could be a lot of dust and everything because it's under construction. They'll take you to a sample flat. Tomorrow you do that virtually. You don't travel, right? You could basically virtually go on a tour, and so a lot of curation is likely to happen. So I think when these factors start to kick in, then what we need to understand today is that industry boundaries don't exist. Because today when customers have an experience, right? Let's say somebody has an experience on a bot, or somebody has an experience on a mobile app. He is not going to keep in his mind industry boundaries and say that, okay, this is the best insurance app, this is the best ride sharing app, this is the best e-commerce app. He's just going to say that why can't this app be like that? So you need to keep an eye on what is the best experience the customer is having in that asset across industries, and then benchmark yourself. And that's when you'll find that you're able to kind of come to the fore. And the last point is, how do you also anticipate unstated needs? Because customers will state their obvious needs, right? They want an insurance policy, they want to file a claim. But for example, one thing which we did during the pandemic, we had customers telling us, that during COVID-19, very difficult to get out if they have a minor ailment. One, there is a lockdown, and the other is, even if you go to hospital, COVID-19 was all about COVID-19. So we came out with a very simple but a very effective feature on a mobile app called Doctor on Chat. So all you do is log into your mobile app. We have an empaneled set of doctors. You would have a digital consultation through chat or video. And then all you have to do is just go and buy medicines, because medical shops are always exempt from the lockdown. And customers were very happy. But this was an unstated need which we met. So I think if firms are able to focus on these principles, you will at least have taken some steps towards the journey of being proactive from a digital care perspective.
I think this is one of the amazing conversations that I've had with so many, I think the examples, the way Bajaj is working towards customer experience, the unsaid needs of the people, and ensuring how the customer experience is enhanced. The customer is at no loss in this pandemic, understanding the need. It's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, sir. On behalf of Dynamic CIO, I would like to thank you, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you, Smriti. Likewise, I think it was a very warm and a very pleasant conversation, and I wish you good luck.